Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we will now commence the third panel discussion, which will be on digital economy. We have four panelists who will be joining us virtually. They are Dr. Arpita Mukherjee, Professor, Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations, India. Dr. Surat Tirakapibal, Associate Professor, Department of Marketing, Thammasat University, Thailand. Dr. Mona Shrestha, Adhikari, Chief Executive Officer, Enterprise for Management, Economic Reform and Gender Equality, Nepal. And Dr. Shering Sige Dorji, former Chief Executive, Thimphu Tea Park Limited, Bhutan. And this panel will be chaired by Mr. Oshada Senanayake, Chairman, Information and Communication Technology Agency, Sri Lanka. Mr. Oshada Senanayake is the Chairman of the Information and Communication Technology Agency of Sri Lanka, which is the apex ICT institution of the Sri Lankan government. Mr. Oshada previously headed multiple startup ventures, which included a diversified portfolio with a focus on technology, facility management, and an Airbnb chain, amongst other business interests such as research on smart battery technology. With strategizing and building partnerships as his core skill, Mr. Oshada consults and mentors multiple technology-based startups, being at the forefront of executing many successful digital transformation strategies, predominantly in the banking, finance sector, and blue chips in Sri Lanka. Mr. Oshada was also based in the US and UK prior to establishing himself in Sri Lanka. He has an MBA from AIB Australia and a bachelor's degree from the University of Northumbria in Newcastle. Mr. Oshada is also a visiting lecturer at the University of Bedfordshire at the Oxford School of Business for postgraduate MBA students and shares his knowledge in the areas of strategic management, digital marketing, and IT governance. Mrs. Oshada Senanayake, so over to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining in for the second session just after the lunch break. And a warm welcome to all my fellow esteemed panelists, and how apt is it to have all of my panelists online at the moment we are talking about the digital economy front on our third session today as we speak. So I believe I just want to move on to the inaugural session just yesterday at the SANEM LKI sessions focusing on enhancing BIMSTEC connectivity in the new era. Just yesterday, the Sri Lankan Foreign Affairs Minister stated a few salient points that I would want to quickly delve on. Professor G.L. Peeries noted that connectivity should not be just a gov-to-gov initiative and not restricted to the corridors of powers, but also people to people. That really reverberated quite strongly with me. It was also noted that there are quite a lot of non-trade barriers as much as we create engagement and cohesion through the engagements such as BIMSTEC. Now, this is the exact reason I think we should focus on priority on the digital economic aspects as we go along in establishing and continuing this BIMSTEC summit across the 7 countries. I'm also proud to be on this session. When Sri Lanka was sharing it, the BIMSTEC Charter has been formalized, and I believe the next stage of the BIMSTEC activities would pivot around technology as well as the digital economic aspects of it. So I will start off by setting the tone before I move on to my eminent panelists. I believe in terms of a digital economy for any country, there are key imperatives that we need to take into the foray. Readiness of critical infrastructure, such as the internet connectivity, as well as digital literacy, and also accessibility and affordability, I believe, are key tenets that we need to address to ensure that we have an equitable environment on the digital economic front across this consortium of countries on the BIMSTEC front. Or else, as Dr. Mendes noted yesterday, in fact, the inequality might trigger in and the concerns of the smaller countries of being provided the shorter yardstick of the stick would be prevalent on the digital economic front as well. Now, when we focus on the readiness of critical infrastructure from a connectivity piece, now we've been talking about connectivity from a perspective of governments, but I want to shift that thought to digital connectivity. The International Telecommunication Union has a Connect 2030 agenda, where it's been reiterated and aligned with the UN SDGs to ensure that we have accessibility and affordability across not only the region, but globally. The target for the ITU, if I may say, is by 2023 to ensure broadband access to 65%, at least 65% of households across the world, to ensure internet usage by 70% of individuals, and more importantly, to reduce the costs of accessibility. Again, I'm talking about costs of communication and data, to reduce it by 25%. Now, these are quite bold targets that we all have to align. And in fact, I could state that Sri Lanka has gone on this journey well harmonized with the International Telecommunication Union's pursuits. And I'm glad to state as today, we've ensured the reduction of tariffs, the affordability of internet has gone up, albeit the macro-environmental economic challenges we have. That's no secret. But today we are the cheapest in the world for fixed broadband, and we've got the 20th rank. And we've broken into the top 10 in terms of affordable broadband access in terms of mobile connectivity, which we are on the 8th. But again, we need to continue to ensure rural connectivity. So the concept of the Universal Service Obligation Fund concepts would come into play. Every country has a Universal Service Fund to ensure rural connectivity enablement that will catalyze the attempts by the telecommunication providers of each country. So these are key imperatives. And also, as we go on, the digital literacy piece is very important. As much as we talk about the digital economy, digital inclusivity is key, and I think digital literacy is one of the key pivots on that. Moving on, readiness of cross-border digital infrastructure for digital economy is very important. I believe data flow matters are of utmost importance. The regulatory frameworks, as well as policy discussions, has to revolve and pivot around the free flow of data to ensure complete digital economy that is completely harmonized across all of these countries. Now, this is an area that, if you look at any country, irrespective of even the BIMSTEC, has been struggling to deal with, and this has been well documented on the Untitled Digital Economy Report of 2021. Maybe Dr. Arpita could elaborate a bit more on that as well. So again, we will go into detail, but I think this has been reaffirmed by the previous couple of panels. Dr. Vacharas from Thailand noted the harmonization required and the electronic certificate of origins coming into play. Again, very important to ensure parity in terms of effecting trade, the free trade agreements, so that it's not misused. So we can ensure that certificate of origins are harmonized, are digitalized, and enabled by the new technologies such as blockchain to ensure that we don't have any of these misusing of these options. Dr. Prabir also mentioned about the importance of a single window. So I think the trade single windows are very important. I think most countries, as Dr. Prabir mentioned, has moved on to enabling this, but I think each and every of the BIMSTEC country might have to focus on these key aspects as well. But then again, the more important aspect is the digital economy policies. The equalization taxes, the cross-border digital tax exemptions that might have to be looked at from a BIMSTEC perspective are very important. Bangladesh has done quite well in terms of the enablement of digital tax across big techs globally. It was well documented again. India has its own equalization tax of 6%, but again, we need to look at the implications of this from a BIMSTEC perspective of ensuring, again, reciprocity. Sri Lanka has a zero tax regiment in terms of digital aspects. But again, impacts of also gig economies being created, whereas it's going to cross-cut over the traditional environments will have to be looked at. So with this discussion and thoughts, I would like to pass it on to my first eminent panelist, Dr. Arpita Mukherjee. Dr. Arpita is a professor of the Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations. And interestingly, she works closely with the government in India and policymakers in the EU, US, ASEAN, and the East Asian countries. So without much ado, I would like to pass it on to you, Dr. Arpita, for further elaboration on these aspects from a digital economy perspective.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the organizers for inviting me, and thank you, chairs, very much for setting the tone of today's discussion. What you set the tone is rightly pointed out that you have to do the two-step process to actually have a digital trade. One is your own home. So there is need to have internet connectivity. There is need to have the right pricing and access within the countries, and then it is across the countries. Digital trade is also, there is a worry that it can be dominated by some players while others may be left behind. But given that we are in a world of fourth-tier technology, all these countries that BIMSTEC members, we are talking about startups, we are doing very well with startups in most of these countries. And we are trying to get our SMEs integrated into global value chain. So I bring into the 3 or 4 aspects where the digital technology can help us, and where I think within BIMSTEC there can be agreement among the countries. I think there is agreement among the countries that there is a need to integrate our SMEs and our women entrepreneurs and others in the global value chain. And this can be done much easily through a digital platform or a network. Now, which platform and how the platform can be created is of course discussed within the countries and across countries, but the platform, the benefits of the platform is agreed upon in most countries. Now, in terms of the platform, it is always good to see that the private sector is more engaged in the platforms, because there are many experiments where, government try to come in to make the platform, but the reach has to be not within the countries, but also for the SMEs to reach the outside world. The second use of digitalization, when you look into in terms of the custom clearance process, when you are looking at the SMEs and their trade, one of the big custom clearance, and we heard about a lot about the NTBs and the paperwork. In many of these countries, during COVID, we have gone in for paperless dress out of need. And that we should not go back to the older regime of physical inspections and delays, and may continue with the regime of pre-shipment clearances, documentation, checking before the consignments are arriving, custom clearance processes. While customs are setting up RMS, which is online in the region, if you look into the experiences, there is a gap between the custom digital infrastructure and the digital infrastructure of allied agencies like the Food Safety Authority or the Drug Authority, and that is where there can be more collaborations, and there is need to have a good, robust risk management systems. While we may have a laptop or a computer at the port of entry, the problem arises is because we are not using an online system to do the risk management. That is something that, discussions can really focus on. Now, the third thing that I would like I'm just putting these ideas in the front for discussion is because I heard Dr. Rahman and also the chair today. WTO is also trying to create a framework of a plurilateral negotiations for digital trade. India is not a part of the negotiations, and ASEAN members like Indonesia has also expressed reservations. But that doesn't prohibit a country like India to just replicate the similar kind of a framework which India did with the UAE a few days ago. So our text is now in public domain. Have a look at that text, because India for the first time actually had a digital trade chapter in its trade agreement. And in that digital trade chapter, we have actually covered all these issues that we would like to discuss in another trade agreement or a trade forum like BIMSTEC, which includes cyber security, cross-border information flow, data sharing, authenticity, paperless trade. So all of that can be discussed. Now coming to the regulatory framework. Yes, digital trade in itself is taking up much faster space than the regulatory framework to actually catch up with it. And that kind of makes it sometimes countries are very worried about making commitments. But we can definitely make a commitment towards a framework which is data sharing with a trust. It's not like you have to share all data. You don't need to lose out on your regulatory space, and that is something which is a lot more being discussed in India. I don't think we have been able to even come to a consensus within a country like India. We don't have a data regulation at this point as we speak, but not having a regulatory framework doesn't mean that we are not able to take some kind of a best practices move, a move towards best practices, what countries can do and not do, And I think a forum like this can have more discussion on those issues. There is a need to data share. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown the need to share the data only to just do a simple thing like patient traceability or to do a joint vaccine research. Many countries which have a very rigid rule on data sharing in sensitive areas like healthcare, like Korea, now made certain changes under the Disaster Management Act. Now, whether such changes should be under the Disaster Management Act or the regulatory framework in itself, like GDPR, would allow such changes to happen is something that, you know, we can debate and discuss in a forum like this. But I do also feel that there is a lot of opportunities for all these countries in the region in doing capacity building for digital access for the vulnerable groups, be it SMEs, be it women, and actually train them in things like international trade. So that is something we can all look into as a part of how we can collaborate on training, how we can collaborate on setting up joint startups hub, how we can collaborate on doing partnerships between the technical institutes and the private sectors of this region. And these will be some of the areas that we can look into. Lastly, our studies, we did detailed studies on cross-country and setting up of technology, and our study shows that the cost of the logistic cost, actually when you remove the physical checking process and use a robust technology-based checking with high risk consignment, low risk consignment, the corruption reduces to half and the logistic cost reduces to half, and there is a 40% time saving. And I think these are the benefits of the technology, and sometimes there are many other sensitive issues which may not allow BIMSTEC to move forward, but I think technology is an area where all countries will have some basic minimum consensus that there is a need to technological upgradation. They have some concerns about the access which can be resolved through joint capacity building programs and helping each other and sharing knowledge, and I think there is a lot of room for collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arpita. That was quite insightful, and I think a couple of salient points is absolutely, I think we would have to look at unified platform to ensure that we not only digitalize the single window aspects, but also radiate the digital economy benefits to both the SMEs as well as the startups, and I think that's a very important point. And such a platform will certainly open up market access very fast to the other entities. And I believe also the aspects of traceability with likes of blockchain technologies coming in could be very well unified with a unified platform. So with that, I'd like to move on to Dr. Surat Tirakapabial. Dr. Surat is currently a full-time professor of marketing and the vice rector for administration and international affairs at the Thammasat University in Thailand. So Dr. Surat, over to you to hear your perspectives from enablement of a digital economy on the BIMSTEC countries.
Good afternoon, everyone. A pleasure and honor to be here to share with you my experience and also my thoughts on the digital economy, particularly the educational technology. Now, before I continue, would it be possible for me to share my slides, please? Because right now I'm trying to do that, so. But
we're making you co-host. Make co-host.
All right.
I think you should be able to now, Dr. Surat.
Yep, thank you very much for that. So I would like to share with you my thoughts on EdTech, or in other words, the technology that we can use for education. And at the end, I would also like to share with you what we have done at my university, which is Thammasat University. So first, let me start off by sharing with you some of the well-known facts, I think, and also statistics by UNCTAD, and also some will be from the World Economic Forum. For example, on this graph, you can see how the smartphone adoption has increased virtually all around the world, no matter how developed your country or the economy of your country is. And you can see that that is the trend, and it is forecasted to continue moving forward that way as well. And because of that, we do see that the internet use as a result of that also increase no matter which part of the world you're looking at. And that is also a trend that continues to move forward. And we see that increase in all regions across the world. And because of that, we are also experiencing more and more global data traffic. And that is again forecasted to increase in the years to come. And because of that, if we start to look at the firm level, we will see that many companies, both in the public and also private sector, although this graph particularly show only the private sector, you see that their investment in AI and machine learning has drastically increased over the years. And that is also another trend that we'll continue to see all around the world. And apart from that, if you look at it from the advertisement perspectives, as more consumers, as more citizens are engaged in the online activities, you see that a lot of advertisement are now being moved from traditional channels to more of the online channels. And that is also another trend that we see no matter where we are in the world. So in terms of university or higher education institutions, we see that there are many things that we do have to realize that is changing and that the trend is coming. And obviously, because our main mission as a university is to groom people to become the next generation leaders and also to serve the job markets. So the first issue that we have to concern ourselves with is obviously how the job will change with all of these trends going on. And if you look at the report by the World Economic Forum in 2020, and if you look on the right-hand side of the slides, you see that more than 85 million jobs are going to disappear. And although that is a huge number and many people are scared or fear of that number because obviously their job might be insecure or how the job market is going to change. But there's also another side to the problem that we are going to have to face very soon everywhere around the world, which is the lack of people with the skills that we need to serve this digital economy. So if you look on the left-hand side of the slide, you see that although 85 million jobs will disappear, we will see 97 million jobs that will now start to appear in the market. And it is our mission, our responsibility as one of the higher education institutions to fill in that gap and to make sure that students and also people who are already in the workforce do come back and get their skills upskilled or reskilled to make sure that they're ready for the new job market. But that's not only one of the dimensions or one of the challenges that we have to face based on the impact or the significance of the digital economy that is occurring in the world, but also the experience that the learners or students are expecting from our institutions are also changing. Particularly with COVID going on, we do see that most of the classes do need to take their forms and transform from offline classes to online classes. We do see trends or preferences of students who want to now learn anywhere at any time. And if you look at these pictures, you see that now, classes are being taken home, or they can also be taken outside of the classrooms with their friends, or many cases, we also see students who are interested in doing interns, getting real practice experiences at the workplace. But another change that we see is that we do see people do come back to schools to get their skills upgraded or get reskilled so that they're ready for all of the new jobs that I have shown the picture of that are currently going to change. So we do see that there are quite a few things that we need to quickly transform our university so that we serve the needs of both the students at the undergraduate levels and also people in the workforce who are returning to our institutions to get their skills upgraded. So recently we have launched the 5th campus. Currently we do have 4 campuses which are physical. One right downtown is called the Thabachan campus. The other one in the suburb area called the Rangsit campus. We have a campus in the north in the Lampang province, very close to Chiang Mai, and one in the east, which is close to Pattaya. So recently we launched the 5th campus, which is in the virtual space, and we call it the Thammasat Metaverse Campus. And what we plan to do, and part of this is already ongoing, is that we plan to have at least 4 things or 4 types of activities being created in this area, in this space. First, obviously, is the immersive learning classroom that we're gonna have happening in this space. We're gonna launch 3 different types of immersive classes. One is in social science and humanities. Basically, we will use AI technology and also VR technology to take the learners with the eyeglasses back to a point in time in the history so that they learn about the history better by immersing them in the context in the past. And when they make some decisions or they move in a certain way, then they'll see what would be the kind of responses that they will receive. This also opens doors for social experiments to be conducted without any effects on real human beings or real citizens in our country in today's world. Apart from that, we also plan to launch the anatomy class so that we can now have medical classes, dissection classes, in the case where they don't need real bodies to work with. And that's one of the challenges that we have in the past few years with COVID going on. We also plan to have classes in science and technology so that students can see how simulations, particularly in terms of manufacturing processes, do take place in factories and also in production plants. But apart from that, we also would like to have some activities going in our VR museum, which will take students or tourists back in history and also to learn more about the culture and the democracy that take place. Initially, our university was established about 88 years ago, exactly the same year that democracy was established in Thailand. So we have been always the platform where students come and learn about democracy and then their rights and freedoms as well. We also plan to launch the omni-channel marketplace where people can come in and then use this platform to sell both digital products and also physical products. So if they do have products that they would like to sell as NFT, they can do that. Or if they would like to sell some products, which can then be sent to the home of the buyers, that can also be done. And we plan to have tokens to be the medium of exchange in this platform as well. Lastly, we also would like to have the sandbox space. And this is the new project and it is already ongoing. We are grooming our students, our staffs, and also the Thai publics to bring up some initiatives for startup ideas, and we match them with venture capitalists and also successful business partners. And these come from both within Thailand and also outside of Thailand to help fund and to also groom and also help develop all these ideas so that these ideas can be brought into real commercial space. So these are all the things that we are trying to do at Thammasat University, both to be a platform which can groom students and workforce to learn about how to create the next generation of the digital economy, in particular the metaverse technology. And also we are having this as the open platform. So we are welcoming all of the partnership, both within Thailand and also outside of Thailand. And if you would like to learn more or if you would like to be a part of our initiatives, then this is my email and we are more than happy to discuss about anything that we could collaborate together. So thank you very much for your time and hope to hear from all of you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Surat. Very thought-provocative and interesting information. In fact, the metaverse that you finished off, I think is quite important for a digital economy drive from the BIMSTEC perspective, where the NFTs, the non-fungible tokens, the cryptocurrencies, as well as the digital assets has to be taken into play. And I think India has made first strides in terms of setting taxation for digital assets, as well as looking at a future digital rupee by next year, I believe. Again, as Dr. Arpita also mentioned, the regulatory aspects has to catch up on these key nuances that we need to bring into play to realize a digital economy across the BIMSTEC collaboration. So with that, I'll move on to our next panelist, Dr. Mona Shrestha. Dr. Mona is the Chief Executive Officer of the Enterprise for Management, Economic Reforms and Gender Equality, or we call it EMERGE. I believe there'll be some interesting perspective coming from Dr. Mona as well in terms of the digital inclusivity aspect as well, where we have to look at the gender imbalances and ensuring that we have parity across all fronts and ensuring the digital inclusivity as much as we focus on the digital economy front. So Dr. Mona, over to you for your thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all from whichever part of the world you're joining us in this interesting session. Thank you, SANEM, LKI, and USAID for providing me this opportunity to join such excellent panelists in the discussion on digital economy. After hearing from our two speakers now, I would like to focus on two aspects being grounded on the realities of women entrepreneurs in general and women entrepreneurs of the region. Empowering women in business means achieving multiple development outcomes. It's about boosting productivity, promoting inclusive economic growth, increasing economic diversification, and meeting sustainable development goals at large. We are also aware that we have socioeconomic structures that affect men and women differently and the subgroups within these groups. And we know that women and girls are the ones who face the greatest impacts of any disaster, as it amplifies the existing gender inequalities and it puts women's and girls' lives and livelihoods at risk. Now, we are living in this COVID-19 era. And COVID-19 is one form of disaster that has left no one behind in the way it has affected our lives and our livelihoods. And like any other disasters and pandemic, this too is not gender blind. Women are doing more domestic chores and family care than men, and women are more likely to lose jobs than male counterparts, and sectors that employ a high share of women have been especially affected by the crisis. This is something that we face in each of our countries. We're also living in a world where closing the global gender gap is estimated to take nearly 136 years, as estimated in the Global Gender Gap Report of 2021. Now, that's just another generation of women. Given this alarming situation, there are 2 points I would like to highlight to set the tone of my point here. Globally, women's active role in the labor market is decreasing, and there's widening financial disparities among genders. This trend, as the World Economic Forum notes, exists because women are employed in sectors that are increasingly automatized. And we know that women at large are less likely to enter into technology-related jobs, those that are listed as high-earning professions. It is also evident through various research that the COVID pandemic has disproportionately impacted women in general and women businesses in particular. They have been compelled to shift and or enter the digital ecosystem and continue to face challenges to survive in the digital marketplace. And the challenges are huge. Patriarchal socioeconomic structures in families, organizations, and institutions, access to digital resources to enter, engage, and survive in the e-commerce marketplaces, digital skills, knowledge, and the leadership and network of women businesses online are only a few examples. Now, the importance of digital skills has been ever increasing, but the pandemic has brought urgency to the fore. And I say this because the digital skills that were considered additional skills became one of the necessary skills to possess in all facets of life. And as companies shift their businesses to e-commerce platforms due to COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdowns that women entrepreneurs struggled to develop their online and digital skills, and especially those concerned with marketing, selling on the internet, or selling their product on e-commerce websites. So the disasters like COVID-19 laid bare the need to leverage digital technologies and extend their existing businesses by advertising their products online, reaching a larger clientele. We can see this, it's evident as we look at Facebook or any other social media that we interact daily. There's a lot of marketing that is going on by the SME sectors or other MSMEs, and especially by women entrepreneurs. Now, this aligns with the findings from the 2020 Rapid Assessment Survey that was conducted in Nepal with 363 members of the Federation of Women Entrepreneurs Association of Nepal, which is the apex body of the women entrepreneurs, where all women entrepreneurs covering 17 districts from all 7 provinces. The study was conducted by our company Emerge, along with our partner Tulo.com, which is an online platform, as part of a project entitled as Revitalizing Women's Business Amidst COVID-19, supported by the USAID. What this study told us in 2020 was that around 78% of businesses experienced the closure of business for a long time. And that was most noticeably impacted during the survey. And the impact was higher for small and micro enterprises compared to medium and larger ones. And this is all about women entrepreneurs businesses. Another finding of the study also said that the closure of business was because some were unaware of the presence of digital platforms, which they could promote and where they could promote and also sell their products. And many lacked the digital skills to shift to online platforms. There's another 2020 regional comparative study by the WTO in South Asia region, which includes 5 of the BIMSTEC member countries, East Africa and Latin America, with women entrepreneurs, which showed that it was only 1/4 of the respondents in South Asia and East Africa region that received digital training on new technologies and the use of internet, whereas in Latin America, it was nearly half of the respondents. So this is something that we might want to draw our attention to. However, when asked about their future interest in digital training, it was largely 2/3 of the 234 respondents in all 3 regions that showed keen interest. So that means there's a huge interest and commonality in all the regions. However, what is being provided right now is different among those 3 regions. Also, based on my experience working as a development consultant and a women entrepreneur in Nepal, and having interacted with a lot of women entrepreneurs in all these regions in particular, there are some common challenges and opportunities that women entrepreneurs face as they enter the digital space. And I think as we talk about creating policies and cross-border trade digitally, these are the things that we have to keep in mind before these policies come into being or are even being drafted. Some of these challenges that are faced by women entrepreneurs in terms of the participation in the digital economy is that the women entrepreneurs, they feel multiple survival challenges, such as getting into business, surviving in the market, and also growing and expanding their businesses. We all know that they have low level of education, as our other speakers have also mentioned, and they also have limited access to productive resources. They face, of course, the cumbersome custom procedures and the legal constraints, and are also on a survival-oriented stage of the enterprise ecosystem, where they aspire to move to a growth-oriented stage. And these challenges, they get multiplied during pandemics such as the ongoing COVID-19 one. We've also heard from others today and yesterday also that the supply chain has disrupted primarily as the women and the SMEs they are relatively excluded from the technological tools. And we also know that the low technology and tele-friendly businesses of women are further affected because of the increased household responsibilities during the lockdown. So, along with all these problems, the other business-related problems and the ongoing social and cultural expectations, they all add to the increasing stress that the women entrepreneurs face, which need not necessarily be related to trade per se, but it's something that we all need to keep in mind. Also, another point is that moreover, being very small in size, women's businesses could eventually even close down in absence of targeted relief packages. With none or limited collateral in the name of women, access to finance remains a challenge, obstructing the expansion or upgrade of business digitally. I mean, having said all of these as challenges, there are also some opportunities, like the ones that my own company, Emerge, has been able to avail with the digital space. Amidst this COVID-19, some of these opportunities is that with the traditional shop of the brick and the mortar mode almost phasing out or being limited, the digital economy has grown and it has enabled the access to customers, it has been able to connect to shop digitally, and the culture of doing business digitally is growing and is growing fast. We know about the various other advantages of the digital economy, so I would not go into that. But I also want to add one thing, which is it can be said that the women entrepreneurs are claiming or reclaiming their digital space by learning new skills and getting adapted to the digital ecosystem. There is an example that I would want to highlight, a testimonial from one of our participants of a project that we are conducting right now, and she's a woman with disability, where she makes these reusable sanitary pads, etc. And she has been we've been promoting her through one of our initiatives, which is called Udyami Uthan, an online shop. And she says that the UU, which is called the Udyami Uthan online shop, it has made our lives easy. We don't have to worry about product delivery challenges, including mobility and restroom availability. And these are things that I don't think would consider, keeping in fact that within women, we have to look into the various intersectionalities part. So the digitization is the new way of doing business, which we all know. I would like to emphasize on perhaps the 4 A's that we can say that determine the level of engagement of the entrepreneurs or businesses. We've talked about the access to technology. We've talked about affordability. It's also about the application, which is the skills to be applied, which includes policies that support women, enabling women in technology. And the 4th one that I would like to add is on terms of adaptability, which is the effective use of the digital skills, websites, emails, social media engagement, e-commerce skills. It's also adapting to new payment systems and enabling the buyer-seller connectivity. We've heard a lot about the connectivity issues, but it's also about adapting to the buyer-seller connectivity issues here. And finally, the COVID-19, of course, has been a wake-up call for women businesses as they struggle to get online, transact on the e-commerce platforms, and learn new skills to be digitally empowered. And I believe that women entrepreneurs in the region and elsewhere, they need what I would say 5 C's to survive and compete in the digital economy. One is capacity, where we need to build their capacity through targeted programs, government responsive policies, etc. We know that UNSCAP and EIF, for example, are doing some excellent work in the South Asia region. The second is in terms of connectivity. We've heard a lot about the connectivity. This is more in terms of, I would add here, about connectivity within women entrepreneurs of the BIMSTEC region and other players of the digital trade ecosystem. But it's also about the link with buyers, sellers, government institutions, logistic support institutions, etc. The third one is about creativity and to ensure that all women businesses can harness these digital skills and stay competitive in the global market. There is the need for the promotion of new, innovative and creative solutions on e-commerce, which is the need of the hour. The 4th is in terms of clarity, and our other speakers have also mentioned about this, which is most of the women businesses do not or seldom understand about the challenges of getting online. It's good to say that you need to get women online, but it's also important to have clarity on the IP rights, for example, the risk management system that Dr. Arpita also talked about, the insurance is, policies, and also about protecting your own legal side. And the 4th one is also about continuity. The 5th one rather is about continuity, and this continuity is about policies, programs, and practices where policies need and support need to be channeled through the governments, etc., towards enabling women entrepreneurs to be gainfully engaged in and benefit from e-commerce and the digital economy. So having said all of these, I believe these measures contribute to boost the digital economy, to socio-economic development, and the creation of inclusive and resilient societies during and beyond the pandemic. It's also empowering women entrepreneurs of the BIMSTEC region. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mona. I think any digital economy drive forward as the BIMSTEC should prioritize and ensure gender biasness and gender inequality is eradicated and minimized, and also more importantly, let me add up, also reduce technology-induced gender violence online as well. So it's very important that we look at the digital safety of all of these aspects, but very interesting 4 A's. And I think that sums up exactly what we require to have in terms of affordability, application, access, and very interestingly, adaptability of skills as well. So with that, interestingly, we move on to Dr. Shering Sige. And very aptly, Dr. Shering Sige comes from a computer engineering background with a wide experience as a chief executive officer and running the much-known Thimphu Tech Park in Bhutan. It's in fact Bhutan's first IT park. So it'll be very interesting to hear back from Dr. Shering's perspective from a digital transformative aspect, key salient points we need to take up as we go along this BIMSTEC initiative of driving forward the digital economy. Over to you, Dr. Shering.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone in the region, and good morning or good evening to
other people joining in from other parts of the world. I'm really happy to be part of this panel. I think BIMSTEC is a very great platform for the 7 member countries to cooperate and collaborate on the many different aspects. And I think digital economy is one of the important ones. Firstly, I would like to mention that digital economy is very much a very important agenda for Bhutan, the government and the people of Bhutan. And the adoption of digital technologies is being advocated by none other than His Majesty the King of Bhutan. So there has been a lot of programs and projects geared towards preparing ourselves, preparing ourselves for the digital economy and take advantage of all the emerging technologies and the digital technologies for our advancement. So I would like to share my personal perspective. Right now, I'm not associated with any government agency, but I have been in the ICT sector for over 20 years. So I would like to give overall perspective of perspective as a Bhutanese on how we see Bhutan gearing itself towards the digital economy space. Firstly, I would like to mention that the BIMSTEC really offers this great platform for the people of these member countries to collaborate and connect with each other. I think there is already a great level of interaction at the government-to-government level, but at the people-to-people level, I think there's a lot more that can be enhanced. And when I talk about the people-to-people level, I think it can also include the interaction at the business-to-business level. And when I say that, I think there is a lot of opportunities for Bhutan to learn from the other member countries. So Bhutan being a small landlocked country with a very small population base, I feel that the digital economy ecosystem is much more vibrant in the other BIMSTEC countries compared to Bhutan. From the perspective of Bhutan, I would like to summarize the initiatives towards the digital economy, the initiatives being undertaken to fully realize the kind of the potential and the opportunities that exist in the digital economy space under 5 key pillars. It is not really mentioned in any of the government documents, but I feel that if I can look at the initiatives from this, from the perspective of these 5 key pillars, and in that, the first important pillar I think is really the infrastructure. So, as a developing country, I think communication infrastructure perspective, Bhutan, I think is doing quite well. We have a fiber optic network connecting all the nook and corner of Bhutan, even going up to the remote villages now. The robustness of this fiber optic network needs to be improved. There is a room for improvement, but nonetheless, there is this great fiber optic network laid across the country. And the internet backbone, international backbone, we get it through India. So over there is a little question about redundancy, but the talks are on between Bhutan, India, and Bangladesh to get another internet connection, international internet connectivity from Bangladesh to Bhutan via the northeast of India. So that will enhance the internet backbone much better once that is achieved. And the second one is from the capacity building perspective. Bhutan lacks capacity for the technology sector. And when I worked at Thimpu Tech Park, so we have had a lot of companies from outside, looking for good software developers. But it is not easy to have a big pool of software developers in Bhutan, being a country of small population. And likewise, I think we need to build capacity for emerging technologies, including cybersecurity. So this is another, kind of important lens through which Bhutan looks at in terms of, building capacity for digital economy. So I'm done with number 2, and number 3 is the industry development. Bhutan is constrained by a very small market. So for all the businesses, all entrepreneurs, this is one of the biggest challenge. We are a country of less than 1 million, so the market is very small. So mainly, I think because of that, so our IT companies have not been able to grow much. And even if we get FDI companies, they come in mainly to utilize maybe our manpower, lower cost of operations, but to serve the outside market, because the market within Bhutan is quite small. But despite that, we are putting in a lot of effort towards building this tech industry in Bhutan, through FDI, as well as through supporting our own local entrepreneurs. Number 4 is the ecosystem. So we are trying to build a very conducive ecosystem for the industry to grow, as well as for the skill development, training, and for our academia and the research institutions to flourish, and improve the collaboration between the government, industry, and the academia. So lot of improvements have been made in terms of ease of doing business, bringing about easier regulatory, making it easy for the business to operate, easing the regulatory hindrances and all that. So that is one of the fourth lens through which I think I can look at the initiatives that are happening in Bhutan. Now the 5th one is the government initiatives. So I think because Bhutan is a small country in terms of population, as well as in terms of the industry base, so most of the initiatives in Bhutan are usually government driven, and the capacity of the industry or the private sector is quite limited. It must be because of that. So the government has taken a lot of initiatives towards digitalization and digital transformation. So it started with the government's e-government initiative called the G2C project, which started sometime around 2010, and it is an ongoing project under the Prime Minister's office, and that has expanded to make public service delivery, bringing public service delivery online, now using online payment. So that has achieved, lot of things from the common people. On top of that, presently the government, something that is very relevant to this dialogue, is the government is undertaking a number of digital transformation projects, and one of them is the single window system, or making customs clearance easy for trade. So that project is going on right now, and we also have another big project going on for the automation of the taxation system called the Bhutan Integrated Tax System. The project is almost halfway through now, That is another major project, and we also have another project that will really help the digital economy, and that is the National Digital Identity Project. So with all these initiatives underway, Bhutan, as I mentioned earlier, is taking digital economy very seriously. Next, I would like to quickly highlight few of the challenges that Bhutan faces when it comes to digital economy. I think as a landlocked country, as a mountainous country, so logistics is one of the big challenges. Small market, lack of required skill set, and nascent private sector tech industry are some of the challenges. And I feel that there is a lot that BIMSTEC countries can do together to maybe overcome these challenges and turn them into opportunities. Before I end, I would also like to touch upon two things. And first is on inclusivity, as Dr. Mona from Nepal has highlighted. I think inclusivity and gender inclusivity, as well as looking at the digital divide and being mindful of people being left behind when we adopt these technologies, I think is very important. Sometimes we, those of us living in the capital city take for granted that, everybody is on board, but there is a high risk that a lot of people in our countries may be left behind. So I feel that these require deliberate actions, deliberate initiatives to make sure that nobody is left behind, and we take them along as we look into the future using these digital technologies. And lastly, I would also like to mention that things are moving very fast now with the metaverse and a lot of trade on digital assets using NFTs. I think that there are a lot of things for us to do on the conventional digital space, but at the same time, I think it's important for the BIMSTEC countries to keep an eye on what is emerging and take advantage of the opportunities that these new emerging platforms and technologies offer. So that's all from my side for now. Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharing. Very interesting perspectives from Bhutan in terms of its digital transformation, and completely agree that we could do a lot in terms of uniting as the BIMSTEC countries in driving forward the digital economic aspects. So with that, in the interest of time, I would like to open it up for questions before we summarize all the thought-provoking ideas that's presented by each panelist. May I ask for the help of Chatuka and Dr. Salem, if you can. Yes. We may first take the questions coming in, I believe, from the chat box.
Unfortunately, until now, we haven't got any question from the chat box, so I'm requesting the Zoom participants to, can either write or you can, if you want to speak, please raise your hand. But if you can start with the questions from the audience. If you
Sure. So any questions from the audience? I would always take it. We got to be super eloquent to ensure there's no questions. So I believe we've been very detailed, I believe. But let me open it up to the physical audience. Any questions, clarifications from the digital economic front? We have a question over there.
Hello. This is more of a comment. So the importance of cross-border e-commerce and the digital economy was discussed. But while some countries have implemented regulations to monitor and keep statistics of cross-border e-commerce, now coming from Sri Lanka Customs, no processes to monitor, regulate, or facilitate e-commerce has been implemented in Sri Lanka. So I think it's very important. I mean, maybe as BIMSTEC countries, a common framework can be adopted. I think that kind of thing would be very good.
Absolutely. I think I'll take that question up from a Sri Lankan perspective since you asked that. I think that's the importance of ensuring a national single window that I think going beyond a custom management portal like the Asikuda that we have, it's important that we have a single window coming in where there'll be a lot more other government agencies coming in. And as we mentioned earlier, the data sharing is also important. So the data classification, the data sharing is also very important. But however, as per the last UNTAD report on digital economy on 2021, these are challenges that all countries are facing, but I completely agree. I think it's the right moment that the BIMSTEC countries should come together in ensuring that we have that cross-border flow, but also ensure that we start measuring that data. But there's no right answer to that. It's always a challenge, but I think we can overcome and take it as a first stride of the BIMSTEC. Maybe the panelists would want to opinionate on that as well. Maybe Dr. Arpita or Dr. Shering.
Thank you, Chair. Should I or Dr. Shering?
Yes, Dr. Arpita, please go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
So, one of the core issues here is data. There are two aspects when you look at the data. One is the custom zone system of data collection. So when you go online, it's that itself would generate a lot of data, and how the country within analyzes and uses analytics to analyze the data is very important, because that enables you to, if there is a understanding gap, data gap, or a technology gap, the data in itself tells you what to do next. So therefore, data collection, I do agree at the point of custom is very important. Generally, the data that is initially shared, if you look at the EU model, they do share two types of data very much within and across the EU member state under the two portals called RASFF portal and Eurofied portal. This is mostly the data on product rejection. So data which is related to why certain products are rejected, and that is what we call an NPV. It is more clarity on NPV. That is the data that is initially shared through the customs framework, if you're looking into the customs framework. Now, and many European countries do other formats of data collection, and one of the format is that when they do the entrepreneur survey, or when the entrepreneurs are filing the GST, they add 2-3 questions on those surveys, like whether they are using the digital medium of trade, or they are adding 1 or 2 digital questions to the existing entrepreneur survey to understand how integrated the entrepreneurs are, both within country in terms of digital trade and outside, with the rest of the world. So these are some of the measures that we can actually think about BIMSTEC countries doing in partnership with international bodies, some of these cross-border trade and integration and the benefits of that integration. We have tried to do some of that within ICRIAR, and one of my colleagues, Tanu Goel, has already done a work this year by, she talked to 1,500 entrepreneurs, and they found that, even during the COVID period, there has been a rise in sales, there has been a rise in employment, there has been a rise in profitability. So there are different benefits of being integrated into the global value chain through a platform. So those kind of research and studies will be helping us with getting more data, and that data also in itself helps to improve the digital platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arpita. I think that eloquently explained it. I believe, Dr. Rehan, I think we've got some queries online.
Some questions and comments in the chat box. So Suresh Nanwani is asking, very interesting presentations, thank you. Are there harmonization efforts to share knowledge and resources for countries where speakers are from and for other countries? And then Dr. Christian Ploberger from Bangkok. There was a strong emphasis for cooperation regarding BIMSTEC and Bhutan. However, I'd like to ask, is there a particular focus on enhancing cooperation with Northeast India, or is it more with BIMSTEC or on a wider basis? Dr. Somesh Mathur asked, does data localization make sense when we have cloud computing? How does competition policy impact online platform? I think that's also a very interesting question. And finally, Ishat Sharmin asked, how will digitalization of economy impact the level of formalization of economy in this region? Keeping in mind the LDC graduation, how would the digitalization process of economies of this region should be recalibrated? So these are the comments or questions in the chat
Some
box.
interesting questions. So I would like to take the interesting question on the data localization and the cloud aspect. So I believe we are moving from a paradigm of data residency towards data sovereignty. It doesn't matter where the data resides as long as the data sovereignty is imposed. For example, like the safe harbor of data, again, I think Dr. Shering may also provide some input on this as well. So countries are moving into a cloud-first strategy. So the old adage of the data residency is being replaced by data sovereignty. And it's not about who owns the data anymore. As we talk about data flows, especially on the digital economy front, it's about who has sets access, who gets to dictate terms, the control mechanisms, and usage of data, focusing also on human rights, privacy, and national security. I think those are the key imperatives. Maybe Dr. Shering, from a digital transformative perspective, you may want to also chip in on that question.
Honorable Chair, I am in agreement with you. I think the move towards cloud is very strong. So while there is some reservation on the part of government agencies on hosting their data on the cloud, especially if it is an international cloud, public cloud outside their country. But, like you mentioned, rather than being too focused on data residency, I think as long as data sovereignty is ensured through, other aspects of, control and policy, I think that is that development I feel is a good one, and I think that's a positive development, and I'm in agreement with you on that.
Thank you, Dr. Shering. Maybe Dr. Ahan, you may be in better state to answer the previous question, whether the BIMSTEC conversation can go beyond that from a BIMSTEC perspective.
No, I think we are actually talking about BIMSTEC, of course, and all the countries in the BIMSTEC. And but definitely Northeastern India is not outside of this. Probably because of the proximity, Northeastern India's integration with Bangladesh and to some extent with Myanmar would have more emphasis. But I think some of the sub-regional approach can also be undertaken within the BIMSTEC, and that is already there. BBIN is already probably a sub-regional approach, and something like that could also emerge in the future. But depending on how the countries or the part of the countries they want to take this agenda forward. Yes.
Thank you. So I believe with the interest of time, we've compressed a lot of information into 1 hour. But we'd like to take up any questions offline even, maybe if the questions can be collated and passed on to us. Again, I would like to thank the panelists. I think we delved on quite interesting perspectives on the digital economy aspects, both from a important infrastructure perspective, the resilient networks that's required, as well as the affordability and the accessibility perspectives, the digital skill sets, the gender inclusivity that's quite important as well, and also the cybersecurity aspects, and more importantly, the regulatory aspects that has to come into speed with the momentum of the digital economy, or else we'll have impediments. So I think for BIMSTEC, the key fundamentals would be to ensure that we have a regional governance that could help ensure data flow across the borders freely as necessarily as possible to ensure maximum equitable distribution of the benefits of a digital economy could be enforced. So with that, I believe it's a wrap for this session in the interest of time. And thank you for all the panelists as well as all the participants online. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.